tonight on Real Sports.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
This episode is brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. Didn't file with TurboTax last year? That's in the past. Now, Taxes is getting the TurboTax app and filing your own taxes for free if you didn't file with them last year. File by February 18th. All tax forms, all 100% free. Now, this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. New filers and filers who didn't use TurboTax last year only must start and file your own taxes in-app by February 18th. Excludes TurboTax Live. Full terms at TurboTax.com.
Welcome back to another exciting edition of the Pointless Exercise podcast. It's time for our very first year's end wrap-up special. It's just like the ones that Bryant Gumbel has on Real Sports. And so we've assembled our entire cast. We have David Brown, who's here. He has a feature on David Bodie and Drake LaRoche's unlikely team-up on a mission to DePaul to expose an international yak molestation ring. Mike Pusateri is here with the final installment of his 3-part series on Jack Sanborn's complete commitment to becoming the third Urlacher brother. Jack's been hanging out at the Lake Forest Chili's, hoping to find a Lord of the Dance rebound date. And finally, Mike Donohue with an inspirational profile of Bears' all-time leading receiver Johnny Morris, which ended in tragedy when Johnny broke both of his hips trying to show Mike he can still run the best button hook in the business. So welcome, guys.
Good to be with you.
It's great.
Is he really still the Bears' all-time leading receiver?
Oh,
yes.
He damn right he is. 5,095 yards, right?
It's just barely I think maybe 5,093. We just know that we unearthed it, that it was so laughably low. It just barely cleared the 5,000-yard mark. It's remarkable.
It's humiliating, really.
You're so pathetic.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I mean, everybody here knows Johnny. We're all, at the risk of offending my fellow colleagues, all pretty long in the tooth, let's put it politely. Mm-hmm. And our memory of Johnny Morris, right? It's as a broadcaster. Like none of us saw him even play.
Right.
Right.
And the host of the Mike Ditka show.
That's right, and the Neil Armstrong show before that, and the Jack Pardee show before that, and an icon really to us. So he had a whole act there, and that thing had arced and ended. Well, he's been off the air 25 years, so hangs up his spikes in 1966. Didn't think he'd live to be still alive, 88 years old, and still Chicago Bears all time.
I like the Neil Armstrong show. I wish he had let Buzz talk more, and they just had Michael Collins driving around the studio in his car the whole time. That didn't seem right.
Didn't they put Neil Armstrong at like something that looked sort of like a Space Invaders game, and he would, as if he were a former astronaut, and pressing the plays of the week or whatever. I remember this.
Maybe
it's from a dream, but I don't
know. Maybe that was Ray's TV POW on the Ray Rayner show. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That actually you might be onto something, Dave, because Space Invaders pretty much was the peak before Pac-Man, 1980, 79. Right. That fits the Armstrong timeline. CBS, WBBM TV, the local affiliate of CBS, was getting a little nutty with the graphics and the crossover. So that's probably not apocryphal. I don't know how you can find it though.
Probably can't find it, but if Johnny's he's probably at the track if it's open.
That's right.
Maybe he would know. He would remember.
Johnny was a legendary railbird, wasn't he? Mm-hmm. It's one of his big hobbies. So.
Well, he's got to be really excited then about the Arlington Heights Stadium.
Right. His world's colliding.
So where are we going to put the horses? Johnny, we're not bringing the horses. Oh, well, screw that then. Was there an Abe Gibron show? How far back do we go with these?
I don't think there was television in that.
Yeah,
in those days.
I'm gonna just assume that was ushered in with the whole new age of Jim Finks and everything. So when they finally, hired a real live general manager in '75 and drafted Walter Payton and had So I think Pardee was the first. I know there was a Pardee show and a Neil Armstrong show, and then the Ditka show. Just how like Oprah started off just doing the local the AM Chicago show, and then it became like Ditka took that Neil Armstrong show. I think it eventually became an hour long. It became very, and Ditka being Ditka, it was next level by the time Ditka was done with that. But
the Abe Gibron show would have just been Abe going, Douglas. For half an hour every week. That's it.
A huge barbecue spit that he would just be slow roasting, a pig throughout the show and give it to the guests.
You guys are just riffing, but that would be so cool if that was true and real. Abe Gibron barbecuing on a TV show. Wow.
If Abe Gibron lived 30 years later, it would probably happen.
Why doesn't Chuggo do that with their tailgates? Don't they go live from a parking lot every Sunday that the Bears are home? They could do that.
Do they really?
Could have somebody roast a pig. It'd be fun.
I couldn't think of what Chuggo was, but now I'm caught up.
It's catching on.
Right.
I think they even refer to themselves as that sometimes. So I get royalties.
It's no Manfred Man.
I get a 12%. That's right. That'll be my
between that Manfred Man. You're just really cashing.
That's your best idea. It really is.
Yeah, in only 25 years I've had two good ideas. Ever. Neither of them actually pertain to anything I do. It's great.
Yes. This Christmas special we're doing is not one of them, by the way.
Now, we'll probably never actually air this.
Well, that'd be good. Yeah.
Just make you guys talk for an hour, and then I'll just forget to do it. So it's been quite a year in Chicago sports. All the teams are doing great. But the Bears have a quarterback, and that's pretty much all that matters, right? I mean, would we have traded everything else for one quarterback?
Well, how strange is it that the Bears are an absolute mess, but the one thing they have is a quarterback, where that's just the opposite of what we're used to.
Well, they have nothing except for him.
Yeah.
And they have the brightest future of any of the sports teams.
Yeah.
With one guy.
Yes.
I mean, I guess in theory the White Sox should, right?
No.
It's always theoretical with the White Sox.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
No.
I was thinking how we're going about this tonight. I'm like, in my head, it was a really bad year. And then I was thinking, is it one of the worst years in Chicago sports? And Andy, I know you and I sometimes would stumble across the 1990 season where the Cubs started 0-14, the Bears started 0-7, the Hawks started 0-8, except the Bulls won their fifth titles. That completely eliminated it. But I started thinking, just without looking it up, I'm going to be hard-pressed to find a bleaker season. And like you said, the Bears are actually the bright spot. But if you're going by record, it's obviously bleak for them.
But isn't this year like every year in the 70s? Like every year in the 70s.
But even, I want to say even in the late 70s, early 80s, the Blackhawks would make the playoffs because almost every hockey team did then. The Bulls had a team that went to the 75 or 76 Western Conference, right, which wasn't on television, so nobody knew about it, but Norm Van Leer and the bunch supposedly were running around. They had a brief, they came back and so you'd have to, it wouldn't be a whole decade because the Southside Hitmen Challenge, the Cubs had a whopping 81 win season in 77. Remember, they're flying high in May, 29 games over.
Yeah.
Where all four of them could side. I would say, without doing a whole lottery, this is definitely in the team photo. I mean, remember the Bulls were flying high in January, and then ever since then, that's about all you've had. And that's early other end of the calendar year. So
yeah. Lonzo Ball's knee fell off, and that was the end of that. They've been awful since then.
I do want to just interject because I haven't followed the Bulls as much as I used to, but this is just a funny, quick story, and you guys, I think, might get a kick out of it. But, I turned 50 this year, and a bunch of my buddies who also turned 50, we decided to have a little get-together, and we're spread all out. We got some folk. We got a buddy in Minnesota, one's in Denver, one's in Texas, but had a buddy in Arizona. We decided March, that's a good place to be. The Cubs will play some spring training. We decided to do this in January. We're all looking forward to it. We booked the trip, and after we booked it, I just happened to look at the calendar. I was like, holy shit, the Bulls are playing the Suns. And so obviously we got right on the horn. Didn't matter how many, we're way up in the nosebleeds because everything was sold out, but we got our seven tickets. So now we're really stoked. And at the time we bought those tickets, man, I was like January 20th. And I think the Bulls were like first in the East and Phoenix was first in the West. And so, we lived through the 6 titles and we're starting to get excited. Like, how we schooled them in 93. And this is just going to be great. I swear from the moment that I hit purchase, on the tickets, from that point, the Bulls just skidded. So by the time they actually showed up, man, it was like that game was in March. And Phoenix obviously had a really great regular season. But I felt like we were rooting for the Washington Generals by the time they actually showed up. So that's my Bulls memory. It basically just slid from January, and they haven't really stopped sliding. So they were our highest hope.
So it's your fault. That's what you're saying.
It is. That's what I'm saying. I'm here in the spirit of Festivus to, not air a grievance, but just offer up that confession. But, yeah.
Well, everybody's going to have to make way for the Cubs. As 2023 clearly will be the year of the Cubs. They added Cody Bellinger, former MVP. Jamison Tyon, former number 2 pick. Dansby Swanson has got good hair. So the Cubs waited to see how much the other guys were going to get, and then they signed Dansby. But Dave, did you see that Carlos Correa's introductory news conference has had to been postponed in San Francisco because they're not too keen on his physical?
Have they figured out, has someone identified what the body part is that's wrong with him?
It's not his back, I read. They made it clear it's not his back.
Wow, it's a mystery, huh?
Well, that's good. It's better to be something else, than the back, because he's had trouble with that before. Yeah, I read that too. That it isn't it. But
Jed's done it again.
Jed's going to swoop in and get him for $4 million a year.
Yeah, we got them both. This is great. No, I say, and he could tell just by looking at him that he wasn't going to pass the physical. So they were out on Correa.
Dodged a bullet.
That's what Carter does. Carter just stares at people and tries to. I think he's got weak knees. I'm not signing him.
It's like the guy in The Natural doing this.
I appreciate the sporadic references to what's it? Is it Carter Hawkins? Because I invariably I forget.
Carter Hawkins.
Oh, yeah. Carter's the key to this whole thing. He's the GM. They give him the most important stuff to do. So let's not forget this. Who was it? Was it? It was Mooney. It was on this very podcast. I asked him what the hell Carter does, and he had an answer. Carter apparently is internal communications, whatever that means, and he's like the futurist. He's looking at the roster down the road, the minor league system, whatever. And Jed is focused on the big league roster and the day-to-day and the external communications. Jed's the guy that's going to go sweet talk the media. So Carter has a very important job, whatever it is.
Boy, and nobody's better in front of a camera than Jed.
Jed and Carter are both aces. the Jed tries to say things though. Like Theo was really good at only answering the part of the question that he was interested in answering. He wasn't going to give any more than that. Jed seems like the guy who really wants to tell you what's going to happen, but he doesn't know. That's the problem. I'd like to be perfectly honest, but I have no idea what we're going to do. Oh, thanks, Jed. That's nice.
I saw somebody suggest that with the arrival of Dansby, that Nick Madrigal is now expendable because you got Nico at second, and maybe you could trade Nick Madrigal back to the White Sox, who need a second baseman. I thought the Craig Kimbrell trade just grows darker for the entire world by the moment. Every aspect and permutation is just dying on the vine.
Circular firing squad of a trade.
Right.
Yeah, my big concern is that Nick Madrigal has already played for both teams in the big leagues that were ever interested in having him.
I have a theory on this. You want to hear my theory? I'm sure Madrigal is available. I don't think Jed is going to trade him on the cheap. I think Jed is way too invested in trying to make that work. I think we're going to see some sort of hybrid where they play Wisdom and Madrigal at third. And I could see the reasoning. They'll be like, well, Wisdom hits a lot of home runs, but he strikes out a lot. And Madrigal has no power, but he can make contact. So if we combine them...
But can he make those throws without a crow hop from
I was just going to say, he can't throw the ball from third to first.
Well, he played short.
No way.
He played short in college. He can't play second, though.
He played short in college, and the ball rolled the last 30 feet to first base every time he threw it.
But he can't play second base in a non-shift MLB either.
Well,
but
he
not
has
because
no range. In the few
the
games,
double pass and the pitcher work on the way to first base.
Hit the cutoff man, Nick, on the routine grounder to second.
6'4".
It happened a few times last year where they would shift him to the shortstop side of the bag, and he would get the ball, and he couldn't make the throw to first. And it's like, why are you putting him there if he can field the ball and they can't throw it?
Yeah.
My guess is Nick is going to spend a considerable amount of time at Des Moines. They're going to hope that he hits 340 down there, and somebody is like, ooh, this Nick Madrigal, let's take a shot on him. They also, one of the reasons I guess they probably won't trade it, other than they won't get any offers for him, is that Nico's injury history is not exactly good. And so there's a chance that you're going to end up, God, we need a second baseman. Although they are loaded with them. Bleacher Nation broke down all of the second basemen. And what are they going to do with all these second basemen? like David Bodie and Zach McKinstry and Miles Masturbator or whatever his name is. And Mick Madrigal. They are loaded. Holy crap. Can you build a whole team out of second baseman? Because the Cubs have. Woo! What's the Vegas line of the Cubs? 108 wins? Is that the over-under? Because I'm going over. I don't care what the number is. I'm going over.
Over 2 seasons.
That's right.
So the win total for the Cubs is 86. That's from now until July 4th, 2024. What do you think? Ooh, I don't know. Under.
Yeah, it's remarkable just how little offense Nick Madrigal brings, considering how pint-sized he is. Weak as are.
But he's hit everywhere. He's hit everywhere he's ever been. I just love that. It's like, okay, well, in 3 years, he's played 142 games in the big leagues.
Yeah.
3 years. He's almost played one season.
Before he came to the Cubs, he had a combined 300, about almost 55-60% of a full season. So, not even a full season. Barely.
That was such a stupid trade when Jed made it, though. He's definitely going to double down on trying to make it work.
Well, he dodged a bullet by not drafted. He was already drafted way in over his head, right? That was the thing. Madrigal what was he, a third pick in the draft, right? So
I think it was 4th overall.
So basically, Jed let our friend Rick Hahn off the hook.
But he did but then he didn't because they got Kimbrell, and Kimbrell was terrible for them.
He was.
But they turned him into A.J. Pollock. And now they've turned A.J. Pollock into nothing.
Hence Dave's metaphor for whatever the Kimbrel currency is.
Well, Dave, Cody Hoyer, though, he could be the magic bullet of that trade for the Cubs.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Hopefully
they don't put the magic bullet in him.
That's the only way this can end.
See, Jed, do you remember? Now, Dave, you'll remember this. Remember when Kenny Williams traded for the wrong Dodger? They traded for a prospect. The Dodgers had two with the same name, and he got the one he didn't want.
Right.
I think Jed heard Cody Hoyer and thought, oh, I've got my nephew as Cody Hoyer. What a nice, it'll be like a birthday present for my sister. And then he shows up, he's like, wait, you're not him.
Oh, it's the Hoyer like the watch. Okay. That's right.
Hoyer was actually pretty good for the Cubs, and then he caught the Tommy John disease. Yep. He'll be back this year. Add that to their stable of incredible arms that they have.
Slide next to a Brad Boxberger.
Oh, that's right. We just picked up Boxberger,
who's been pretty good.
I like him. You always know what you're going to get with Boxberger. He's pretty consistent. So
okay.
Yeah, that was a fine signing.
That was fine. Jed's been pretty good in his 2 years at the helm of getting the veteran relief pitchers. He's got a pretty good track record with them. Mm-hmm. He's been able to flip them. Hopefully who are we kidding? Of course they'll be able to flip Boxberger when they're at the deadline and they're 27 games below 500. But one of these days it'd be nice to actually keep those guys and see where you end up. One thing the Cubs do have, which is interesting, is, knock on wood, if Adbert actually could stay healthy for a year, they have two multi-inning relievers, him and Keegan Thompson. Now just think about what David Ross can do with that. He puts his brilliant mind to it. Cubs are going to be unbeatable, I would think.
You can bridge the 6th and the 7th, and the 7th and the 8th. It's great, and maybe the 9th too.
Is that like a thing now? The multi-inning reliever?
I think it was. You know what? It's funny. I think it was a thing, and then it became less of a thing because people figured out that it's you have to be really, really good to be able to do that. So, and to be any more effective than have it another way. So,
because you're expected to do it like slightly more than every 5th day, first of all, right? I would think, or it's like some weird metamorphosis of the old middle reliever, but it's not. But that's interesting. It's already, so you're saying it's already kind of scaled back a little bit in the short history that it's sort of been.
Yeah, kind of like how the opener never really spread that.
Correct.
Much.
Yeah.
So it's still used sometimes, but usually it's just the Rays. So
good.
So in Adbert's case, it was because he, as a starter, whenever he faced a lefty, every lefty hit the ball like 480 feet off of him. And then when they dropped him out of the rotation, put him in the bullpen, and cut him down to 2 pitches and just let him go, he got everybody out. Mm-hmm. And then with Keegan, it was the first time through the order, he was really good. And then after that, it was not so good. So
makes sense.
Never have to see the order again if you do that. But people are touting all their depth in the pitching. You know, they've got Marcus Stroman and Justin Steele, and now Jamison Tyon, and they brought Drew Smiley back, and of course they have Adrian Sampson.
Yeah.
That's what we get to Adrian. I'm like, okay, we've run out of depth.
You didn't mention the professor.
Well, and that's right. When is Kyle? This is it for him. This is last year, I would guess. Last year on his contract, I would guess his last year as a Cub. And when does he actually show up? Now, Mooney said that had the Cubs not been terrible last year, Kyle probably would have kept pitching. That was one of those things where they're out of it, and he's got something in his shoulder, and they just shut him down. Mm-hmm. Had they been competitive, although he wasn't terribly competitive, They may have shut him down because he's throwing batting practice his last few games, last few starts.
But they were no way designed to be competitive last year, and they actually way outplayed their projection, right?
We know, right? They had the 5th best record in the National League after the All-Star game.
That's right.
The second biggest accomplishment in Cub history behind the World Series.
Yeah.
So watch what you say.
And I've already had my tickets to the banner raising. It's going to be great. I can't wait. I won't be a dry eye in the house when they unfurl that. That goes right next to their 8 straight years of not paying the luxury tax or whatever banner they're going to hang for that. That'll all be neat.
Yeah.
Right. Well, speaking of that, the Cubs don't have a lot of money left because prior to adding in whatever they're paying Smiley, not including that, they're about $30 million shy of the first CBT threshold of $233 million. That's not including Smiley. We also know that the Cubs generally hold back about, say, $10 million a year when they're pretending to be competitive for trade deadline acquisitions. So if they continue that practice, that means they got $20 million minus whatever they're paying Smiley, which is what, 10? Something like that. They've only got about $10 million left. That's assuming that Ricketts has even approved them to go up to $233 million, which is a big assumption.
Oh, come on. Crane says they got all kinds of money. And Are you not going to believe Crane Kenny? I mean, come on.
Well,
when has Crane ever led us astray?
Never. He is very genuine. Never fibbed at all. But there's all these proclamations. Oh, we're going to get Conforto, and we're going to get this guy. We're going to get this. There's no money to get these guys, gang, unless they go well over that threshold, which they have not shown any interest in doing. They haven't shown any interest in going near it lately.
I kind of wish, and this is maybe a little obvious, that the Cubs were like provably, demonstrably better for a team that's kind of close to that threshold. Like, it would be nice if we knew that they were on the verge of 92 wins or something, or the playoffs or whatever, or close. We're still kind of guessing with what they have. And, we're assuming some things. And I like what they've done with the up the middle defense, but, I'm not sure if Bellinger is going to hit beyond 217 and all that. So, and the catching is, it's not Wilson anymore. So, and I don't know about the starting pitching depth. I like the Tyon acquisition, but, Adrian Sampson at the end of that rainbow doesn't get me too excited. So for a team that's, on the verge of spending, as much as they can, I just wish I had a little more confidence in what they have.
Speaking of catcher, is John on the depth chart? Is the number one now? They haven't.
He's the only one. Well, I guess PJ Higgins.
PJ Higgins, I guess. Yeah.
But he's the only catcher they have.
Get your free nachos. Okay.
Yeah. Well, if they were run like a real team, though, they wouldn't be that worried about going over the luxury tax because it's first year. They wouldn't be a repeater because Hendricks and Heyward's money, they get a lot of money falls off again next year. $70 million falls off.
A lot, yeah. Plus potentially Stroman, too.
Yeah, and not potentially. He's opting out, so it's
unless he has a bad year. If he has a bad year, gets hurt or something, yeah. But
that's true.
But besides that,
I don't remember what his third year is. It's worth it to him, I think. If he's hurt, he's going to come back. If he's healthy, he's out the door. So if you were a real team, you wouldn't be that worried about it because you could easily not repeat, especially given next year's free agent class, which is bad. So this is the year to spend, and they kind of did. For the life of me, I'll never understand the logic behind giving Cody Bellinger 1 year. I don't understand why, if your goal is to turn him back into a really good player, then apparently your goal is to turn him into a really good player so he can go somewhere else next year and cash in. And I know they were like, well, Boris wouldn't he wouldn't let anybody give him a second year. I'd say, well, there was a way to make that work. They seem perfectly fine with, that's great. Look at this low risk. I don't understand what the upside for them is. If he's bad, he's bad, and you're out of it. I guess that's good. But if he's good, he's
But what if he's really awesome? What if he turns it around between now and April and the Cubs are shitty and they can flip him? Does he have a no trade with that 1 year deal?
No, they could trade him.
I know that's not.
I'm sure they'd have to eat the.
Hilarious.
See, he's only $12 million on this year's payroll because his buyout is 5.5 next year. So I'm sure to trade him, they'd have to eat the 5.5.
Well, I think I understand. I think I understand their logic. Not saying I agree with it, but I think their logic for that would be, we're going to compete this year, and Cody Bellinger, if nothing else, gives us a Gold Glove caliber center fielder to go with now a Gold Glove shortstop and second baseman and of course Ian Happ, your buddy,
Gold Glove left fielder,
Gold Glove fielder, and Sam Suzuki's a good defense. So they would say, okay, well, we're really good. Our up the middle defense is really good. Our corner outfielders are strong, and because we're going to compete this year, and if we do, that's great. And by saying it, by only giving him 1 year, then he's not blocking Brennan Davis and Pete Crow Armstrong and all these guys, and Boris is not going to let him, and we wouldn't have Bellinger if we insisted on more than 1 year. So it's better to have him, hope we compete. If we do, great, and then he'll be gone, and we got other guys coming up. I imagine that's their line of thinking.
I'm sure that's their logic. It wouldn't be my logic if I was running the team. I don't understand. I don't get the value to the Cubs of the 1 year rental in center field. I would rather have a guy that I think, because they don't have any offense. I would rather have a guy then and have to worry about it next year. About, okay, now where are we going to play? Where are we going to play all these guys? We have too many guys now. They don't have an issue. If they really wanted to, they could start a lineup that everybody is a plus defender, including Happ, I guess. If you put the FX is the Bears' favorite first baseman, Alfonso Rivas at first, play Wisdom at third, and then give Jan. Remember Josh Fegley didn't actually squat? Maybe just tell Jan, just one knee. That's fine. We'll try to get you through as many games as possible. And they can have a really good defensive team, and then they can lose every game 4-1, which will be great.
You guys are making me appreciate that is some pretty serious leather. Now that, you got Swanson on board with Bellinger, Suzuki solid and right. I know world's tallest midget in left field, but man, Horner's that's a really strong up the middle. And Wisdom, as much as he's you think of him as a big, huge swing and miss home run guy, he's a really good third baseman. That's they'll save a few runs.
The metrics were really kind to him 2 years ago and not last year. Defensively,
is that right?
They didn't like him at third.
I've seen him though. No, I know.
I think he's good. I think he's a good third.
He's got the quickness. Yeah, he's got a good arm. He'd made he'll make errors and stuff, but he seemed one of the better third basemen I've seen there.
Yeah. Well, plus he had Frank Schwindel instead of Anthony Rizzo picking for him
his
too.
Cast iron skillet that he would hold in his left hand.
Yeah, right.
Frank's off to Japan. So
yes, I saw that.
No, they didn't have the option of bringing him back because I was hoping. I was holding out hope for more Schwindel.
Maybe he'll be a cult hero like Matt Merton.
Yeah, Schwoyadel I would take, but not Schwindel.
What?
So I don't know. I mean, they're talking about Trey Mancini at first base. Trey's a hell of a guy. I don't know. He didn't hit very well last year in Baltimore and hit atrociously in Houston. And he doesn't really play first very well. And he can't really play the outfield very well.
Sounds like a Cub already.
But you got that. And of course,
other than that,
you guys would be amazed to know that no one yet has scooped up Franmil Reyes. I thought for sure that when the Cubs DFA'd him, somebody would swoop in and give him 8 years, $160 million, but it hasn't happened.
Hadn't happened yet. Yeah.
So I'm sure there's a minor league invite for Franmil somewhere in the offing. I'm sure.
What do you think of Conforto as a possibility?
I would. If you're going to do Bellinger, I would do him too then.
He's a Boris guy too, isn't he?
And Boris is going to want the exact same kind of contract. He's going to want 1 year. I think Conforto would be interested in the Cubs he's interested in cash. But I have a feeling coming off of a shoulder surgery, the idea that he might have a considerable amount of time at DH probably doesn't wouldn't hurt his feelings. He'd still get to play some outfield to prove he could do it.
You're not going to need him to throw, right? Because of that shoulder surgery and the injury before that is. I thought I saw something where he's throwing from 120 feet right now.
Oh yeah, Boris was bragging that he's already throwing for more feet than all the other players who aren't working out yet are. He's throwing a lot farther than these other guys. How far are they throwing, Scott? Well, none. But that's farther. Remember when Paul O'Neill punted the ball back into the infield with the Reds? Why can't Michael Conforto learn how to do that?
True. Drop kick.
Yeah. Get Doug Flutie to come by, show him how to do it.
Or with all the soccer players around because of the World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Dansby Swanson's wife plays soccer for the Red Stars. Have her come over, teach Michael how to kick the ball back into the infield. So it might confuse people. I could see Nico thinking he couldn't use his hands and trying to head the ball. It could turn into a real mess.
So I'm sure it's been pointed out that Dansby Swanson is not the first Cubs shortstop to be married to a professional level soccer player. It had to be pointed out, right? It's like a thing.
Larry Boa was married to Willie Roy. Is that
right? I was going to say Ivan De Jesus used to go out on dates with Karl Heinz Granitza.
There's all kinds of parallels. There's the Nomar one. There's also
Jeff Blauser.
Yeah, the last time the Cubs brought in a big time Atlanta Barv to play shortstop.
Is that right? Yeah.
Blauser, I forgot. Blauser had, we all remembered the stats about how he killed the Cubs, and he did. His numbers were ridiculous. He had like 350 against the Cubs.
He had a 3-homer game against him once too.
And he was the Cub killer when he was with the Braves and when he was with the Cubs.
Yes.
He had a huge year with the Braves the year before. He had like an 880 OPS for the Braves. And then it was a huge coup that the Cubs signed him. And he was a key member of that 98 team. Handing shortstop over to... Was that the first incarnation of Jose Hernandez? Who played shortstop?
It was.
Jose Hernandez?
It was the first, yep.
Yikes.
Wow.
When was Manny Alexander?
Also that year, Manny was never really an everyday guy. He was just, Sammy's bag man, I think. He was on the 98 Cubs though. So yeah.
Okay, so what are the two most famous things about Manny Alexander? Didn't Manny when the Bat Boy got busted in Boston with the steroids, they were Manny's? Was that right?
I thought was it in America? Okay. Yeah.
But then
there was a connection there.
But then with the Cubs, it was him and Sammy were sitting next to the towel with the money in it in the hotel lobby when it got stolen.
That was down in South Caribbean, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And Manny was on a franchise full of terrible base runners. Manny is top 5. He never got thrown out on a walk. He never got thrown out at second on a walk.
Like Ronnie Cedeno?
But it's not for lack of trying. He was the best. There was quite a run there with Manny and then Jose Macias.
Ray Sanchez. Yeah. Jose Macias is another one.
The Gremlin.
Jose Macias.
Yeah. Ray, Jose Vizcaíno, who went on to greater things, but he was kind of in that mix. Ray Sanchez.
Well, remember that the first full year when Sandberg was retired, Jose was like a bona fide all-star candidate. He was at like 326 at the break. No, the first full year. Not
breakout was 98. I think Ray Sanchez kind of assumed the Sandberg's job more than Jose Hernandez.
Well, I remember not Jose Hernandez, Jose Vizcaíno. He was hitting like 320.
My bad. You're right. You're absolutely right.
And then he ended up hitting like 240 for the season. So
he actually tore it up in 93, and then he got traded for Anthony Young between 93 and 90. Jose Vizcaíno did, and he did have a long career after that. So he was gone right before Sandberg retired. Like I said, there's a rotating cast of nondescript, usually Latin middle infielders back then. Dave, I'm sure, remembers it well. So does Mike. Good times.
Well, under Dusty, the backup middle infield guys are a blur.
It continued
it's
under
just
Dusty.
amazing how many different guys they had. Like if you could think of a guy from that era, he played for the Cubs, like Damian Jackson. With the spider tattoo, with the spider web tattoos on his elbows. Every time I saw it, it just looked like it just hurt. It's like, how bad does it hurt to get your the bone of your elbow tattoo?
We talk about Yachty's neck, but boy, the elbows.
The elbow, it's underrated.
That's very, yeah.
Tony Womack.
Yeah. Another one.
Of course, Ramon Martinez. Dusty's best friend. He had to bring him around. I just remember going through all the Remember This Craps every time we go through the roster at the end. It's just amazing how many. Ray Ordonez. Remember? Ray wept on his final day with the Cubs, right? He made that error and lost the game, and then they cut him the next day. He was crying in the dugout.
He got cut right away. He was crying after the game. We also had Cesar Astúriz in his ball juggling act a few years later.
That's violent. He would have been canceled if he did that today. Ramos didn't seem to mind, though.
He was stoked. A huge home run that he hit.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Well, do you remember who traded Greg Maddux for Cesar Astúriz?
Wasn't it Greg Maddux?
Greg Maddux, yeah. Actually, probably Scott Boras. There was a lot of that going on in that era. Phil Nevin traded himself to the Twins.
Well, Jim Henry was checked out, right?
Well, Henry would basically throw up his arms, like, I don't know. And then the agent would work out a trade and call Jim and, like, here's what you can get. He's like, okay. And they just do it.
He's like the sweater-vested yacht captain that hired me is gone. And I don't know what I'm doing here. So, anyway.
I saw a Lee McPhail stat today. Before James Click, he was the first general manager of a World Series winner not to return the next year.
That would be the grandfather, right? Larry McPhail.
Oh, Larry?
Right? Yeah.
With the Yankees.
He built the Reds in 39 and 40 that won pennants after returning after the Black Sox series. And they were terrible for 20 years. And he built them, and then he took off for Brooklyn and built them like after Branch Rickey, and then turned them around. And then he finally won a World Series with the Yankees. And then he got shit-faced on the train ride home and insulted everybody and basically lost his – he was like a wild kind of a character. Didn't sound anything like Andy McPhail. But his son Lee, who eventually was the American League president, he's the guy who's probably most famous for as the Baltimore GM for the Frank Robinson trade, when he dealt Milt Pappas for Frank Robinson, which kind of propelled the Orioles.
Terrible trade. Terrible trade. I asked this. Who wouldn't want Milt Pappas over Frank Robinson?
Yeah, right.
I asked this with a sense of amazement. Donohue, how do you remembe that?
This is every podcast turns into Remember This Crap if he's
Yeah, I know, but how is this possible?
I wrote a long screed years ago, and I was just a total just anonymous blogger for Andy. You'll probably remember the Goat Riders of the Apocalypse.
Oh, who could forget the Goat Riders?
Oh, yeah. My buddy Kurt. And it was in 2006, and I did a lot of research. And the whole thing was about how Andy McPhail was a fraud with the Cubs. And he was, because his 87 World Series championship was such a absolute ill-gotten gain for him to take credit for. And even 91 was basically a couple trades that he made, but still. And I went into it, and actually his grandfather was pretty impressive, and his dad was. I mean, but they were, but Larry, it kind of stuck in my memory.
He sure was.
And, yeah. But Andy got to claim the 87-91 Twins, and it always burned me, so I broke it down, exposed what a fraud he was, and in so doing, though, learn a little bit about good old Larry McPhail, the apparently belligerent alcoholic but mad baseball front office genius.
So Do you think, did Andy MacPhail build less of the 87 Twins than Theo built of the 04 Red Sox?
All I know is he got Dan Gladden. Is that about his only acquisition? Everybody on that team.
Didn't Dan score the winning run in the World Series?
Was he the 87 Twins? That was 91. All right, yeah. And he did pick him up.
Did Randy Bush or Gene Larkin draft him in?
You sure it wasn't Scott Leos? Sorry. I'm just throwing out random 91 Twins.
No.
No, the 87, like Frank Viola, Kirby Puckett, even Greg Gagne, all those guys were drafted before MacPhail. Burt Blyleven, I think he may have traded for him. I don't know. But it was just absolutely riding the coattails. In the name. And the last name. Because we all knew it. Lee MacPhail, his name was on the American League Baseballs. And yeah, we were just cursed as Cub fans to have to endure the ill-gotten success of MacPhail. It gave him a lot more rope than he probably deserved with the Cubs.
Well, we should have a new game. It's 6 Degrees of Michael Kostroff. So, Michael Kostroff. Who? Yeah.
Your guy.
Yeah,
from The Wire. Sorry.
You've seen the podcast traffic.
I listened to the podcast.
People should go listen to that. It's a good one.
Wire, but I listened to the podcast.
It hasn't been downloaded very much, so the audio quality will be excellent.
Oh.
So you could go Andy MacPhail, and you could connect him, I'm sure, to Bart Giamatti, right? Because Bart would have been the commissioner when Andy was general manager of the Twins, and then Paul Giamatti and Michael Kostroff were on Billions together. Look at this, 4. We can connect them in 4.
Yeah.
All right, let's try another one. No, that's probably the one we can actually do. But that was worth it. I'm trying to think if there's any more exciting Cub stuff that we could talk about.
It was a look back. I was at a game where Schwindel and Wisdom hit back-to-back homers to win a game in July, so that was fun.
Did you run across the street and get your Wisdom shirt to celebrate? I'm sure you can still get them. They're probably deeply discounted, and you can use the Discipio 25 code at the Avi shirt and get an extra 25% off. You may get paid to take one if you use the code.
Does that work in?
Send your shirt?
Can I just walk up to the? Can I walk up to the register and be like Discipio 25, and that'll work?
I don't see why not.
Okay.
They'll just look at you like, "What are you having? Sir, are you having a seizure? Do you smell toast? Do you smell burnt toast?"
I smell cut grass.
Okay, have a seat. Help is on the way. Yeah, let's see. Great moments of the 2022 Cubs. Actually, I thought of this. So Jameson Taillon in his introductory press conference was talking about how excited he is to be a Cub and to get $68 million. And how like his mom went to Northwestern and he was going to get $68 million from the Cubs, and his dad was from the Chicagoland area and he's going to get $68 million from the Cubs. But he talked about how his first road trip with the Pirates was to Wrigley Field, and it was in 2016. The Cubs were kind of good in 2016, and so I looked it up. And Pirates got shut out by Jake on the first Friday. He remembered that, and but then he was talking about how, he talked to Scott F. his former Yankee teammates Anthony Rizzo and Scott Efros, and he talked to Trevor Williams. Trevor said his former Pirate teammate Trevor Williams. Trevor talked about how great it is and how they'll put your dad on TV every week, and it'll be fun. But I also thought, I'm like, how he had to be super impressed with the Cubs. He would have been sitting in the Yankee dugout last summer when they let Anthony Swarmer give up 7 home runs in a start against the Yankees. You think Taillon's sitting there going, this is a team I'd really like to play for.
That's a manager that guy's for me. Wow.
It was home run derby practice, all off poor Anthony Swarmer.
Well, I'm not sure if I heard you correctly, but it seemed like repeatedly I heard something about $68 million. I'm thinking that may have been the real motivation behind all this.
No, he had a lot of stuff. Craig Breslow, they showed him a video, and Craig talked to him for 2 hours, and then $68 million, and then he signed.
He's a cancer survivor, right, Tyone?
He's a cancer survivor and a 2-time survivor of Tommy John disease.
Wow. Okay.
So he's
wow.
He's met his spending limit on the insurance already.
Right.
It's deductible.
That may have been part of the reason the Cubs are like, it's all out of pocket for him.
Walking down
we're gonna
the
think how much money we'll
like
save.
sign him.
He uses the insurance lot, yeah, but he's got to pay it all. That's worth it.
Andy, do you think that Jason Heyward will stick around to the final cut with the Dodgers?
Did they offer him a non-roster?
Yeah, he's got a minor league deal he's going to spring training with the Dodgers.
Dodgers, okay.
Basically a trade. Cody Bellinger for Jason Heyward.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Except the Cubs have to pay all the money.
Right. On both ends.
Yeah.
So you're asking, will he make it? Will he be on the opening day roster? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I was phrasing it in not as positive of a way. I'm assuming that he's going to get cut before the season starts, and I'm just wondering if they'll make it to the last cut.
Oh, I see. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say they do the thing where with 10 days to go in spring training, they tell him, we don't think you're going to make it. Why don't we cut you, and then you'll have a chance to catch on.
Yeah.
You can go to spring training for the last week or so with somebody else. But he's bad. He's so bad.
So the answer is no, but with a caveat, kind of.
And Heyward will go, that's the nicest thing any team's ever done for me.
Yep. And he'll
not give me 178 or whatever, 87.
And then every 2 weeks, his alert will come up on his phone that the Cubs have sent him another $3 million or whatever it is.
It's weird to be on the other end of that contract now. It felt so. I remember 3 years in, and we felt the window closing. And it was oh my! You don't even want to think about it. Oh my God, how many years left do we have of that contract? We actually lived through it.
I mean, the great thing
it didn't get any better.
The great thing about that contract was it was designed for him to leave after 3 years.
If he was awesome,
the Cubs were like, I guarantee you, the big brains sat around that conference room table. And they're like, he's 26. He's an all-star player. Of course, he's gonna opt out of this after 3 years, and he's gonna go sign a huge deal with somebody else, and then that's gonna line up with all of our waves of talent coming out of the minor league system. This is perfect. The 8 years is that's pretend. We're never gonna have to pay this guy for 8 years. It's a 3-year deal. Whoa! Look how smart we are.
And they're you know what? We'll even give him an opt-out after the 4th year, just in case. He's definitely going to take that.
And they put a no trade in it. And it's that contract is the no trade.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to put a clause in it. Every team's going to be no.
Yeah, so instead of it being a situation where, he outperforms it, but it doesn't matter because they're so rich in talent, they can let him walk. Instead, it becomes the reason they use to basically undercut, after the Darvish trade,
It really did.
Darvish, yeah.
I mean, a weight room speech aside, no matter how valuable that one was, it really hurt them for years after that because it was $22.5 million on average every year that they couldn't spend on other shit that they needed. They were getting very little production out of him. And they had the garbage family sitting around going,
right. You said they couldn't spend.
We gave you that money, and you used it on him.
You spent your allowance.
Basically. And now you want more?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Go get a paper route, Theo.
Wait, speaking of that weight room, was this something you and Mooney talked about? Did that speech have to do with the players were pissed off at Joe? Or am I misremembering that? Was that part of the speech that they were pissed off with Madden?
Mooney talks about how part of that was that they were pissed at the way Joe had managed the game.
It was part of it. Okay.
Yeah.
And the frustration was manifesting itself.
I would have been in there screaming at David Ross. That's what I would have been doing.
for calling nothing but fastballs.
Calling nothing but fastballs, throwing a ball into the stands on a swing,
right?
Having a ball bounce off his mask so 2 runs could score while he laid there like Ralphie's little brother Randy. Just rolling around on the ground like a slug.
He had turtle on its back.
And he'd have been like, I hit a home run off Andrew Miller. I guess you did. So you got 1 back.
Dave, do you know this? So the Heyward, if Heyward makes the Dodgers, makes the major league team, do the Dodgers pay him the minimum of $770,000 and the Cubs pay the rest, or are the Cubs on the hook for every penny of it? Do you know?
I always thought it was the former myself.
No, as I understand it, the Cubs are paying him that, and whatever else he gets from the Dodgers, whether it's the minimum or whatever,
is on top.
That's what that's what Mooney thought too. I asked him the same thing.
Okay.
I think we all think of it like when a coach gets fired and he goes to a new school, and then they just give him they work the contracts out that like if he's got 3 years left at another school, they pay him almost nothing the first 3 years. So the other school has to pay him all of it because they have the offset in the clause. I don't know if there's an offset in a standard MLB contract.
No, I think that has to be special language put in. I think what can happen is when a player goes on waivers. That's when it's there's more of a an uncertainty about that, where the new team claiming a guy on waivers, if Heyward had been claimed on waivers, then that new team would get the contract.
That makes sense.
Okay.
But instead, they simply didn't exercise the option. Is that, or the option wasn't exercised? Right? Is that the difference
on Heyward? No, they just released him.
Right. I'm sorry. There's nothing to do with an option. They have one fully legitimate
They got to pay. They're paying him this year, no matter what.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Now, the one thing I don't know is, I do know is even if there's an offset, and say that the Dodgers are paying him $700,000, and it saves the Cubs $700,000 for the collective bargaining tax purposes, the full amount. I think both teams get charged for him. So the Dodgers, his $700,000 goes on the Dodgers payroll, and the full amount of his contract stays on the Cubs. So he's a $22.5 million hold on the Cubs. No matter what he makes somewhere else.
Right. Okay.
So you can't just cut a guy and then weasel out a part of his contract.
Yeah.
So that's fun. Eric Hosmer, has he cleared waivers yet? I think it's been. I don't know how many days it is.
I think it's been enough time, but I'm not sure. That's a great question. I've kind of been seeing if the Royals were interested, but I don't see a place for him.
Well, there's a place for him in Chicago. He can be part of the all glove, no stick Cubs. Is he still as good a defensive first baseman as he was? Wasn't that kind of some of the knock? Was that he can't hit anymore, and now he's not as good a first baseman? Maybe not. Maybe I'm dreaming that.
No, he's not as
good.
Seems like
you have good
was.
hands. You're going to be a good first baseman, even if you can't bend over.
Even if the idea of a no-hit, no-glove first baseman almost seems like a unicorn to me. I feel like most first basemen should be expected to hit.
Seems like a Frank Schwindel to me.
Well,
yeah, there's some.
I mean, you could be in a glove.
Yeah.
Well,
you would think so. Last year, Fielding Bible, which is my Fielding Bible, did not like Hosmer. He was like a -5 in total runs saved.
Well, that's not good.
So no. I mean, that's not absolute. Defensive metrics are still a little weird, and even sometimes for one season, it's hard to say with definitively that a guy is or isn't based on one season. But he's not what he used to be. No, defensively, hitting actually, he isn't that. It's funny. He's probably like much worse defensively than he used to be, and maybe just not quite as good offensively. He was never, he had a couple of really good years with the Royals, never in a row, and then mostly he's been about 2 or 3% better than average league average as a hitter. So, which is not what you want at first base. You want much higher than that. But but his defense is not.
Well, you said it was much worse than it used to be, but it was also at one point at a pretty high level. I assume, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, his defense last year rated poorly. In the past, it rated well.
Yeah, on those two Royals World Series teams, he was demonstratively good defensively at first base. Like he was making plays in those playoff runs. So you're like, holy shit. So yeah, I mean he was a top-notch defender for much of his career, I would think.
Right.
Yeah, I mean as much as above average like shortstops and definitely, well maybe not shortstop, but third baseman historically up until really center field historically inept. There are certain positions that we've just gotten accustomed to mediocrity, but first base is not one of them. So I'm trying to adjust here to just having a guy at first base.
Are you saying we're used to mediocrity in center field? That seems high.
I think even before
I've taken a run of mediocrity in center. We've oftentimes been less than that.
I mean, everyone knows about that whole third base thing, but I think even before Aramis Ramirez came in, that kind of broke it up between like Madlock and Sano. Even by that point, it was overrated compared to center field. Even by then, it was
Vance
like
Law.
Because at least you had Santo in the '60s.
Yeah,
not having a center fielder is one of the fatal flaws of the DeRocher era, but it goes all the way back to. Go ahead, Andy. Who's the black and white player, the last real center fielder? Like maybe 8 seasons, not even that. It's playing center.
Andy Pafko?
Yeah, but then I always come back to
you always want me to. I get ripped for not including Rick Monday
because he is the last center fielder to have only four consecutive seasons with at least 140 starts.
You're just full of pride that he saved the flag.
Yes. Right, as a member of
that clouds all of your other thing is him grabbing that lighter fluid soaked flag while the hippie was sitting there with his lighter trying over and over again to get it to spark.
2 hippies.
That is one of, people should Google this. That is one of the Dodgers, because it happened in Dodger Stadium, right? Even
it's future team.
The Dodgers did a bobblehead of Rick with the flag, running with the flag. It's really
Cub
good.
Uniform. Yeah, it was a Dodger bobblehead, but the guy there running was in the Cub uniform.
It's a really good bobblehead.
Well, he's famous in Los Angeles for hitting the pennant clinching homer off of Steve Rogers in 1981. Came off the bench. Rogers came in really. I remember watching that game. It was on Columbus Day. I was home from school. Steve Rogers, perennial Expos stalwart starter, came out of the bullpen.
Yeah, I mean, the fucker was in ice for 7 years. It wasn't even the same game when they thawed him out. He was trying to leave his glove on the mound, and it was awful.
Former Cub Ray Burris started the rubber Game 5 match and did very well. He'd thrown a shutout earlier in that LCS, but Rogers came out of the bullpen for only the 3rd time in his career in a tie ball game. And fucking Rick Monday. That's the closest the Expos ever came to the World Series. But Rick Monday broke their hearts. So he became a Dodger hero for that. But he was already a Dodger hero, what he did in another uniform, obviously.
Mike, your recall is pretty impressive. The detail,
Thanks,
the
Dave.
confidence, your diction, the way you're explaining it back to us is oddly great.
Oh, that's me. Nice to meet you. Hey, once in a while I'm wrong though too. So grain of salt.
But it doesn't sound like it. Like
very confident. Even when he's wrong, it sounds like he's right.
Right.
This one I'll stake my children's lives on. Rick Monday, Dodger hero, multiple reasons. But yeah.
Oh, so this brings up a good point. So because one of the things we learn on Remember This Crap is that there are certain things in our memory we are sure happened that didn't happen the way we remember them. As we look into it, we're like, oh, wait, this, what? And we had one of those things when I was at Thanksgiving. I was at Thanksgiving at my, we ended up at the in-laws of my nephew's house. We just ended up over there. And I didn't really know the dad, but he was he started telling a story about this crazy play he had seen in an Illinois-Wisconsin football game, and I realized that I had been there for this crazy play. It was at Camp Randall. It was the year before Illinois went to the Rose Bowl, so it was 82.
82.
And him and I remembered this play exactly the same way. We remembered it, and it was a bounce pass lateral that then turned into a touchdown pass. And it happened in the final seconds of the game. And we both remembered it as Tony Eason throwing a pass to Davy Williams. And basically, Williams took 2 steps back. Eason purposely bounced the ball on the turf. Davy acted like it. Oh shit! It was like it's incomplete.
Chasing after
and the tight end just goes tearing ass down the field, and all of a sudden Davy rears up and throws this long touchdown pass, and Illinois wins. And how exciting! And we both talked about it. We were amazing other people explaining, how the play worked and all that stuff. And so when I got home, I decided to look it up. That's not at all what fucking happened. And I have an excuse. I was 9 years old. He was like 25, but still. The pass was Randy Wright to Al Toon.
Of Wisconsin.
Yes. But in my mind, where I pictured it happening, as I saw on the replay I watched on YouTube, it happened in the exact part of the field that I remembered it happened. Randy Wright bounces it to Al Toon. All the Illinois guys stop. The Wisconsin tight end runs up the middle of the field. He throws a touchdown pass. Wisconsin takes a 2-point lead with like 50 seconds to go. Illinois gets the ball back, and Tony leads them right down into field goal range, and their little barefooted kicker makes a field goal at the horn, and Illinois wins.
Al also combined with quarterback Randy Wright and tight end Jeff Dahl for the bounce pass play against Illinois.
Dave found it. Holy shit.
That's crazy.
Drop that link in the chat, Dave.
So
wow.
it goes to show what both of us remembered it wrong, but we remembered it in our mind because Illinois won.
Right. It got conflated in the excitement of the sequence. We're so close to each other.
It's the same moment. We had that same moment that Brian Williams had when he was explaining how his helicopter in Iraq took fire, when really it was the 3 helicopters behind him, and he was never in danger, and he got fired from NBC for lying about getting shot at in Iraq when he didn't. Is exactly the same as Jim, whatever his last name is, and me remembering that it was Tony Eason to Davy Williams when it was actually Randy Wright to Al Toon.
But that's what's called right. Well, that's what's called the Mandela effect, and I think I can bring up another one that we discovered, Andy, and that Dave and Mike, being longtime Cub fans, remember. And I even heard Pat Hughes after we re-edified ourselves, just stumbling across this and had to correct it.
Pat Hughes.
Hall of Famer, now Hall of Famer, but not former Cub, Pat Hughes. No. He, not yet. He also enforces the wrong fact, and it was the opening day 1989. And like, if you have Dave, you have some pretty good recall, and I know you know your 80s Cubs. And you think, the opening day 1989, Mitch Williams' first appearance as a Cub, and so what's the first thing you think of? Do you have a thought, Mike? Do you, or maybe?
I don't know. Kruk?
No, sorry. But a lot of fans remember, and we all remembered it this way, and it was that Mitch Williams, the Wild Thing, who, the same year that Major League came out, and there's a character just like him, played by Charlie Sheen, he came in and loaded the bases.
That's right.
Walked the bases loaded.
Loaded them on base and balls. And every Cub fan I've met since that, I was a senior in high school, it's all the same thing. And I know Pat Hughes said the same thing this year, and that's not what happened. No. Williams came in the 8th inning, and he was a little wild, and but then there was all these cheap hits. In the 9th inning, he was getting dinked and dunked actually, and then he did strike out the side with the bases loaded.
Right.
He walked one guy, right?
I don't even know if he may have walked one.
I don't
think he did not load the bases.
I don't think he walked anybody in the 9th. I think it was 3 hits. Because
if you look at the line score, he did have a lot of walks.
Shit. And it's just one of those things where it became the legend of him. The Wild Thing walks the bases loaded and then strikes out the side.
It's like these commercials where they throw the challenge flag, right?
Yep.
Now
Remember Dempster in Philly getting all sweaty? And didn't he walk the bases loaded, and then Lou came out and chewed his ass, and he somehow got out of it?
I remember Lou like barking as he I don't know if it was in Philly, it may have been, as he was crossing the foul line towards the pitcher's mound and didn't even get to the mound before he turned around because he'd already said what he had to say.
He told him to throw fucking strikes. You could see it.
Yeah.
You could see what he said. And he turned around, stormed off back to the dugout so that him and Matt Sinatra could hop in a car on their way to Cincinnati and get lost. And one of the great Lou Piniella stories of all time. They ended up in the wrong state. Good times. But it is weird. I mean, you just convince yourself, that, oh yeah, this is what happened. And then nowadays, it's pretty easy to prove yourself wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of a weird sensation. But, yeah, Mitch Williams did not walk anybody in the ninth. Single to center, single to left, single to short. But I think we had video or something. Even the description of Baseball Reference was like ground ball to deep short, third base hole, 2 in a row. So he got dinked and dunked and still struck out the side. So somebody let Virgil Patrick Hughes know. He's spreading misinformation.
I think we even watched
what
it.
What might have happened? What if maybe he had a lot of full counts. I mean, I'm just saying. Maybe
I'm
that
sure
was
he threw a lot of pitches.
The 1989 Baseball References still have count information. So yeah, he only won 3 and 2. So yeah.
Was it 89 or 90 when he got hit in the head with the line drive?
89. Yeah, Jeff King in Pittsburgh.
And Don Zimmer threw up.
You told me that. Yeah, I didn't remember that. Zimmer zooked on the field.
Yeah,
Not the first time. We'll talk about 84 when Mario Soto knocked his ass over and he swallowed his chew.
Because he was hammered or for some other reason?
No, he swallowed his chew. Oh, it was the whole Dennis Eckersley debut, and Ron Say hit a homer that was fair, not foul. And Zimmer was causing such a scene that Soto got his red ass worked up and tried to knock him down.
So to speak, red ass. Yeah.
Yes. Hey, good call, Dave. I like it.
Well, Zimmer had a thing for being slung around the field. Pedro did it to him in the playoffs.
By Hispanic players. I know. By Hispanic pitchers. Yeah, it would repeat itself, 19 years later?
Yeah. So Don was just asking for it.
There should be a Don Zimmer getting thrown on the field escape room.
Well, Don had a metal plate in his head.
We all knew that, right? We were
Yeah.
Cub fans in the 80s.
And
I thought maybe that's why he threw up after Mitch Williams
It
got
is.
hit in the head, because it was traumatic for him.
It was like
I'm
phantom.
dented.
He had phantom or sympathy. He had sympathy pains.
Yes.
Made him bark.
Yeah, I think the thing with Zimmer is he got beamed twice really bad, too. I don't think it was, yeah.
Once
a lot
as
of
a Cub,
guys
I think, right?
Yeah, he played for the Cubs. Yeah, I don't know
once
when he
as a
got
Cub,
beamed.
He took one off the cap. One of my favorite things when you look at like old time baseball, for a while they had and they actually kind of had it. Who was the guy who had to wear the big hat and he had the little shield thing in it because he'd gotten hit in the head?
Ellis Valentine?
No, of recent vintage. They had those helmets.
David Wright had a
for
big
pitchers.
helmet, but you don't mean him, do you?
No, this was a pitcher. We got hit in the head. It wasn't Chris Bassett, but it was, and he had to wear the big hat. It had things in it.
While pitching?
Yes.
Left-handed?
I don't remember. I just remember
Yeah.
the hat looked ridiculous, and looks good on you though. But for a while, the guys had you'd see
Alex Torres.
That's what it was.
Yes.
The Mark Kelso of baseball with his extra big dome. Well, now those big hats are like a thing. Now he'd be like cool. We'll probably see him in baseball. Guys wearing big hats out on the mound.
Right. It's a style thing now.
But you see like old footage, and when they first started wearing batting helmets, I mean the things are basically like the giveaways at the park when we were a kid. That's like 2 millimeters of plastic with a little
Right,
plastic
it's got a
band
Mountain Dew
inside.
logo on the back.
They're getting hit in the head with that. Didn't the ear flap, wasn't that invented for Ron Santo? Because he took one in the temple. And then he was the first player that had an ear flap on his helmet. I believe that's a real thing.
I know he took one off the temple. Can't remember against him.
Yeah. The good thing about that was he got hit in the head, but he could take one of the Ron Santo frozen pizzas and stick it right on his, hold it on his head at first base, and do a little product placement while he was playing.
With Santo, there always kind of maybe seemed to be a little bit of an Ernie Pantuzzo vibe where, you know, he can get hit in the head a lot, and it's just not gonna, you know.
According to this, it was Earl Batty.
Shit.
Good job, Dave.
Equipment manager Ray Crump on the Twins.
Oh, Ray Crump.
It's a great equipment manager name.
It is.
Yeah.
Improvised one for him and Tony Oliva. But, it was 1961, so I can imagine Santo wasn't too far after that.
Yeah, and Jack Fisher hit him in the face. That was 1966, October. I just looked it up. That was not from memory.
So that was sort of like Randy Wright's bounce pass.
Yep.
Just a little off.
That's exactly what it was. And if you hadn't looked it up, I would have got away with it.
Well, I wanted to know. I wasn't trying to catch you in a...
No, that's fine.
For you meddling kids.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Take off my Scooby-Doo mask. And, so, Dave, I was going to ask you about if you, as a big baseball brain, think this is a big deal or not. But so Dansby Swanson, the Cubs' new shortstop, the knock on Nico when Nico went over to play shortstop was, does he have the arm to play shortstop? And as we watched him play, it was pretty clear that he did. Dansby, now this is the part I'm going to ask you. I looked it up on MLB Advanced Media, whatever those fancy stats are. And when they do mile per hour for throws from different positions, like O'Neal Cruz, number 1, averages like 94 miles an hour a throw, even when he's like just throwing the ball back to the pitcher. Dansby ranked 48th out of 50 shortstops at I forget what it was, 76 miles an hour. Nico was, I think, he was top 15 at 85. And the reason I looked it up was people are like, Swanson's pretty shortstop. He doesn't really have a very good arm, which could be an issue. So do you think that should I get hung up on miles per hour from an infield
I would say
throw?
not too much. I would like to see, this is something that I have not looked up. I know that was like a recent addition this past season, I think, to those statistics that we get to see public facing. So I've not really looked at that, but so O'Neal Cruz, what did you say he was? 95?
It was something ridiculous. I should probably look it up because I wrote about it in the Pointless Exercise newsletter.
I mean, as long as we're not talking like Nick Madrigal's arm, I think.
Well, here was the thing: Madrigal and Dansby had about the same miles per hour, which I was a little troubled by.
Well,
but Madrigal Dansby won the Gold Glove, so I think
I'm assuming Swanson, because I don't watch as closely as maybe in my younger years, but Swanson just has incredible range.
No,
thing just no.
This makes all the plays.
He can get
Sandberg
to it.
He can get to it.
Short.
You're out.
Dansby make a lot of errors.
Dansby averaged 79.2 miles per hour on throws. That ranked 48th out of 50 shortstops. O'Neal was 93.9 miles an hour. He was first. Javi was 5th at 88.7. And on the Cubs, of all players, Dansby's 79.2 would have ranked him 12th, just ahead of Nick Madrigal at 78.9.
Well, it's not anything that I've ever noticed when he's played that it's like something that could be an obvious detriment. So
there's a huge advantage to outfielders.
Right.
They make the longer throws. They get to air it out. And so that's why O'Neal was like the outlier. He was first, right. And then everybody else on the list was an outfielder, I guess. Was Nate Eaton an outfielder? The Royal?
Yeah, he played third too, but he was a corner outfielder.
He was second at 98.1. Ronald Acuna at 97.9. Aristides Aquino, who was also off to Japan and Korea, 96.3, and Oscar Gonzalez 96.2. So,
another thing about defensive statistics, we'll see if the Cubs put him in the right position, that will help. If the Cubs scouts and their analytics people know where to put him on the field, like the Braves people did, you can account for things like that. So, turn something that's kind of a weakness into neutral, or maybe a little bit of a, something that isn't going to hurt you.
Yeah. Which I think they did actually help Nico with that last year, if I read.
Well, it's a great sign. So
yeah,
they have a good defensive lab. We need the pitch lab to come through now.
So now for the shift rule, they didn't do the V, right?
Right.
Where they draw the V off the second base, and you have to have two guys on each side of it. It's just you have to have two players on each side of second base when the pitch is thrown.
Right.
But you can run blitzes and stuff, right? Just send Nico. You got to time it. As soon as the windup starts, Nico can bust ass over to second base.
Is it when the pitch?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Or is it when the ball is put in play?
That's a good question, Mike. I'm not sure about that.
I would say it's either when the windup starts or when the ball leaves the pitcher's hand. I would say you don't have to wait for the ball to be hit. Although, honestly, at that point, you've got less than a second anyway. So.
Yeah, and then wow.
But if it's the windup, I mean, couldn't a bunch of pitchers just adapt the? Well, it can't be. It wouldn't be a windup. Well, it could be. You don't have to have anybody on. Would we just get a bunch of pitchers doing the Paul Bird, where they do the big step back in the arms? We get the big windmill again, so that it gives the fielders extra time
action to
run to their preferred spots.
See, this is where I wish Joe was still managing the Cubs because okay, let's say you put Madrigal at second and he had Swansby at short. Joe could put Nico in center, and then if a pull heavy lefty came up, Joe would just put Nico like in the shift position basically, because you could move the center fielder in, you can move an outfielder in. And
can you?
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, why not?
Yeah, I'm sure you could play.
You could move an
start sprinting in.
No, you don't have to sprint in. You could just position. If he's the center fielder, you could position him wherever you wanted to.
I'm still trying to work this in concert with the old timey 9-second windup, which I think would be hilarious. Just realigning. Coming in from center field.
And I wonder if
you could see Joe Madden having a field day with that shit. Like
for sure.
Well, the other guy who, when he was lucid, would have been La Russa. I mean, the Cardinals already did that annoying thing. Remember, they did it for at least one full season, where their bunt defense would charge. Like the infielders would, as the windup started, would start running in. So you had all the fielders in motion, which if the balls hit to the right or left of them, they're all screwed because their momentum is going straight forward. But they were doing that.
Is that the wheel play or is that something else?
I don't know. They would just creep up. Maybe not all four of them. But they would time it, and so they weren't. Instead of playing the infield in, he would start with them back, and then they would charge in to be in, just to amuse himself. I think. One thing that'll be interesting, because one thing that some pitchers are going to miss is the almost the rover with a left-handed batter up, the guy that Schwarber and Rizzo hit the ball to every time. I almost wonder if some teams will just take the right fielder and just move him in. And it's just up to the pitcher to make the guy hit the ball on the ground. This guy can still field it and throw it to first. But
the 9-3 putouts will be a little more...
which would be kind of fun.
Yeah.
My guess is that they'll just go back to the old way because, you're not going to get criticized if you fuck that up as you are if you do try something crazy and it doesn't work. But it'd be more fun if they do it the other way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could. Certain hitters, you could just leave left field open. Just bring Hap over, have him play in the short spot. He used to play second base, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
He could try it, and then all you need is a guy to swing late and hit a inside the park home run because he hit a 6-hopper to the wall and left. There was nobody there to get it. Another guy on the big arm list was Christopher Morel. And I was thinking a lot of that, obviously can't find he was in center, but when he played third base, he seemed to try to knock the first baseman over with every throw. He was amusing himself by seeing how hard he could throw the ball. Basically, for the longest time, every time Wilson threw to Rizzo at first, the goal seemed to be to take the glove off of Rizzo's hand and knock it all the way to the foul pole.
Makes me think of Dunston too.
Yeah.
Sean liked to pretend he was pitching from shortstop.
Well, yeah, I think I always felt like Sean was one of those guys. Like, I had a roommate in college who claimed he couldn't throw the ball accurately if he didn't throw it as hard as he could. Like, if you were playing catch and you try to like take something off of it, you'd end up chasing the ball to the point where we would, like, if he threw it over his head, he had to go get it.
Was this Mitch Cumstein? Your
Yeah, he was doing his little night putting with the daughter of the dean.
He's a good guy.
So playing catch with him sucked because he was just throwing the ball. He could throw pretty hard. He was just throwing the ball as hard as he could at you all the time. And it's like, would you just stop? I always got the feeling that was Dunston, which was, I just know I have to throw this hard all the time. Oh, do you? Because it sucks to be the guy trying to play catch with you all the time. Yeah, my hope for Morel, though, is that they don't. They could easily just wrap things up and be like, all right, Wisdom and Mervis are going to handle first, and Morel's going to play third. And I don't want him to play. I just don't think he's going to hit if he plays every day. I think he's far better suited to like being the Swiss Army knife. And enough guys get hurt that you're going to get him plenty of at bats. I just don't want them relying on him to be like their third baseman because I don't think it's going to work.
I was always envious of that Dodgers team in 2017, the year after the Cubs won the series, and like Chris Taylor were just in a playoff game, like in a league championship series, and just go from center field to shortstop, arguably the two most important non-battery positions on the field. And yeah, I know he wasn't like great at center or whatever, but it's like having that. What a useful thing just to do it competently. Those are such critical parts of the field.
Taylor gave the Dodgers a big advantage during day games in center. Because he could, if the sun was just right, those huge buck teeth of his, he could point them. They could be like this, like almost like he had a mirror out there to distract the hitter.
Batter's eyes.
Every time I see him play, it's like, does he not know that Major League Baseball has a dental plan?
Maybe he's not in the union.
Get those things fixed. Yeah, he's in the Damian Miller, Kevin Millar. Was there a strike that he didn't observe at some point that we don't remember?
And then he only has his likeness without the licensing in the video games.
All right. Well, unless you guys have anything that you want to ask each other, I think we may have. This was fun.
This was fun. It was.
Everybody together and sharing our knowledge or lack thereof of a poor recall of major events.
Be on the lookout for my Jack Sanborn story on Decipio.com.
I'm looking forward to that. That's right.
Yeah, I'm working on that.
My Johnny Morris piece, which I shelved, which I shelved my Down with Bobby Douglas piece to write. Since Bobby Douglas is not erased from the Bears record books.
Yeah, I guess we'd be remiss, I guess, to not welcome Hub back to the. Hub's back. It turns out he had a massive heart attack in front of Hallis Hall, and he credits the head of security there of basically he very casually said, and it was funny the way he said it when he was interviewed. He's like, "Well, as you know, during CPR, he had to break all my ribs." It's like, well, no, I don't think that's how that works. I think that was just a perk, huh? When they give you open heart surgery, they break
Trust
all your
me,
ribs.
This is the best practice. Yeah,
He's just punching. And once Hub got, started to breathe again, the guy was just punching him in the ribs.
Yeah. Well, I think we riffed on it too. Like, supposedly he talked about how he was unconscious for 3 minutes. And I was like, well, how do we know he was unconscious for 3 minutes?
Yeah,
unless there were.
Because that guy stood there and was like, should I? It's going to look bad if he dies right on the sidewalk in front of the building. The actual security cam footage, the guy is there, and you can literally see the angel and the devil on his shoulders chatting with him.
As they step over.
And he finally got down, and he resuscitated Hub. So Hub was on like Pro Football Weekly, the TV show, which I can't believe is still a thing. And then he was on the Score. When he was on the Score, they were very careful, they weren't really talking like current Bear stuff because Hub had been like, he didn't even remember the beginning of the season, and then they wouldn't let him start watching games, although they said that he finally got to start watching when they played the Commanders. And both Spiegel and Parkin's like, oh, what a rough week to come back. I'm sorry. But he couldn't help himself. He started talking about Justin Fields. Basically said, well, he's a great runner, but he's a well below average passer.
I heard that. I couldn't believe after his aneurysm or whatever, he was still going to plant his flag.
And so
after the 3 months that Fields has had,
and they both said exactly what everybody thought. Oh, he's back. Hub's back.
Yes. Yeah.
And as I wrote, it reminded me at that very moment of my favorite Norm Macdonald Weekend Update joke, which was Kiss was going on a reunion tour. And so he said, the good news is Kiss is coming back. And the bad news is they're still going to suck. And that's how I felt about Hub. I'm glad he's back and he's healthy, but he's still awful at his job. So, all right, with that, I guess, thanks, guys, for coming on. Happy holidays to you and to all of our faithful listeners.
Indeed.
Yes. And to you.
Yeah, nice to meet you both, Dave and Mike. This is the first time I had the pleasure hanging out.
Pleasure was ours.
It was fun, Mike. I enjoyed
it was a good time. It was a good time.
Many of us have herpes.
I just wanted this to be over.